where I'll be showing you how I paint one of the coolest parts of a Space Marine, the lenses. One of the most unique and iconic looks of an Eavy Metal Marine. I'm currently working on this awesome Jess Goodwin Space Wolf model. These guys were the height of cool back in the day, and if you ask me, still are. To add an extra touch of nostalgia, I've even done an era-appropriate arm swap, and I'll be seriously impressed if anyone can let me know what model this conversion is based on. As always, if you want to follow along, all you'll need is a decent paintbrush, the paints, and any Space Marine you want to look fresh out of the 90s. So you'll probably notice that I've painted all the armour apart from the head. Well, there is a reason for this. The eye lens is tricky. It's a recessed part of the sculpt that's probably going to have the most detailed part of the whole paint job. And if you're anything like me, there's a high likelihood of messing up at some point. I've done it enough times now to know not to waste time painting the helmet until I've got the eye lens looking perfect. So that's my first tip. Give yourself some space to paint this without worrying about wrecking a finished part of the model. Second tip, and this is a good one, cling film. I'll usually protect my model with a layer over finished parts, just in case. So let's add a layer now, just so we're covered. Okay, now we can add some paint. I like to start with a couple of thin layers of AK Interactive White. We want the eye to pop as much as possible, and a white undercoat will help the colours do just that. We always want the paint to go on smooth, and the easiest way to do that is with thinner coats. Once that's done, we can add a layer of 90s in a bottle, Evil Sunz Red. 2 or 3 very thin coats, drying completely between each coat, is going to give us a great foundation to bring these eyes to life. And there we go, a bright, smooth, gorgeous red base coat. Now to add some shape. The eye lens is unique, where you are almost painting completely opposite to the rest of the model. The shading is pushed towards the top of the shape, and the highlights go towards the bottom. No, not that bottom. The technique helps create the illusion of depth, like you are looking through a glass lens, rather than at the painted armour or other solid parts of the model. The shading has 3 simple steps. The first step is a fairly thinned down Mephiston Red. As you can see, I'm pushing it towards the top corner and taking my brush off where I want the most intense part of the paint. I'll normally use a touch of flow improver on these stages to keep the paint nice and wet. The second step is Khorne Red, where I'll pretty much go over the same spots as before. This helps achieve a smoother blend across the eye. Keep in mind on this part that to get the gem look, we don't want any flat colour. The whole eye lens wants to be one big gradient of light to dark to build the illusion of depth. In the last step, we will add a tiny touch of thinned black to the deepest corner. Keep this tiny. We don't want to cover all that gorgeous red we've built up. The only goal for this black part is to form as high contrast as possible for our white highlight that we'll add right at the end. For the highlights, we will be using 3 paints: Troll Slayer Orange, Fire Dragon Bright, and finally, Vallejo model colour Ice Yellow, but any light yellow will be absolutely fine. I'll also be using a touch of flow improver again to make sure the paint goes on as smoothly as possible. So I'll start with Troll Slayer Orange. This is a gorgeous, silky smooth, deep orange that's quite a thin paint out the bottle. Even so, we will thin this a touch more and, following my brushstroke, push it down towards the lower corners, creating a smooth gradient. You might want to add a layer or two, but don't go too crazy. We want red eyes, not orange. Next up, I'll add an almost edge highlight all across the bottom edge of the eye lens, getting a little thicker towards the inside corner. Really take your time on this one. Make sure your paint is properly thinned and your brush isn't overloaded. Fire Dragon Bright is, and I'm very sorry to say this, Games Workshop, not the best paint you'll ever use. However, it does look great on an eye lens, giving a beautiful, clean glow to the eye, so I'm sticking with it for now. If you do know any other decent oranges though, please do let me know in the comments. And for the final step, a superb paint from Vallejo model colour, Ice Yellow. It's a pretty solid colour and so needs some thinning, even a touch of glaze medium if you do have it. The colour though is just beautiful on this lens, and it's going to add some serious contrast and give these eye lenses some serious punch. Get your hands as steady as possible and get as much paint off your brush as you can to keep the bristles as thin and sharp as you possibly can. For this stage, you really want everything comfortable and stable. Take it slow and don't expect to do this in one go. It's also quite common that the paint can dry before making it to the model. If this keeps happening, that's where Flow Improver can help. Once you're finished, your eye will be full of contrast and just needing a couple more steps before being complete. Now this stage I call adding the eyeliner. So there's usually a bit of a step, especially on these metal models, of recessed armour. I find it best to paint this part black as it helps add even more contrast to the eye lens. Be careful, you don't want watery paint here. You need full control of where this is going, as you don't want it to seep into the bright eye lens. Take your time and rotate the model as well as the brush to get a smooth, consistent line around the eye lens. Once this is done and you're happy, we have the grand finale. Possibly the best spot of paint you can add to any model ever. The dot highlight at the top corner of a Space Marine's eye lens is about as iconic as the eye itself. I use AK Interactive White with some Flow Improver. Not too much though. I want the paint to not dry on my brush. I don't want the white paint to be thinned, however. I want it as bright, solid, and crisp as I possibly can manage. So get your brush, get a solid position with your hands, take a breath, and look at that. Gorgeous. I'm actually pretty chuffed that I managed that, especially on camera. Right, there you have it, a 90s style Space Marine lens. And here he is, all finished. I hope you'll agree those eye lenses really help this guy pop. I know this style takes a while, but I personally really enjoy it, and I hope you've enjoyed watching me paint this guy up. If you'd like to see more, I have a couple of other videos on this channel about painting this classic style, as well as some more videos coming in the future. Anyway, Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.